All right, welcome to this week's episode, Nitty Gritty. I'm excited.
We get to sit on a coaching session with Andrew.
That's right.
Yep, fly on the wall. Here we go.
So this has been something since we started the podcast. I've been trying to figure out how to make this happen, like in the back of my mind, because I know how awesome it's going to be. Because we have Stephanie Bogan with us, who has been my business coach friend for 3 years now, and it has been amazing.
I don't think we could have a better guest today than somebody with her skills.
Yeah.
With everything going on.
Yeah. And
Right?
so like the last, 2 years, year and a half we've been doing this, it's like, okay, I have this conference. Maybe I'll just pack the mics with me. Like, how am I going to make this happen?
Do that next time.
Yeah, we
And
totally
Whistler.
could.
That would be
Costa
amazing.
Rica.
We should just literally podcast
line
episodes,
everyone up.
line everybody up in episodes. Yes, but I'm here. The universe brought me to you. Literally hand delivered me.
The only
to
good thing
Park
of
City for
Corona
you.
has brought Stephanie to Park City.
And here I am.
And here we are
Why
in
didn't we
Bam
do
Bam.
this in Park City?
I don't know.
Cleaner air, more
Because the
sun.
barbecue was here.
Okay, that's
And let's
fair.
be clear.
We'll do the next one in Park City.
That's the only reason she's here is because of the
No,
barbecue.
I love you, but the barbecue was the only
Well,
reason
I
my
am the
family let me
barbecue.
come.
Well, good. Well, that has to go through me because I had to cook it today.
That's right.
So I'm a little tired. It was a big cook today. We're feeding the University of Utah football team, which a lot of people that know me will be angry with that.
Well,
We are a BYU restaurant.
Well,
but
that explains a lot because
Yeah.
I saw the operation
lot
here.
going on
There's
up
a
there.
lot of operation behind that little front
Yep.
up there. Yeah.
Definitely more than normal. Because what is today? Wednesday? Yeah. Wednesday's usually a pretty quiet day, but not today.
Not
So
here.
thank you, Utes. I can say it.
Go for it.
Yeah, I just did.
Okay.
I said it.
So, thank you for coming down today.
I'm so excited to be here.
It's going to be fun.
It already is.
So, Stephanie, to give people, I want to hear you explain what you do because you've helped me for the last 3 years to learn how to say this. So now I get to finally ask you this question.
Yep.
What is it that you do? She's coached me for 3 years on how to answer this stupid question. I finally get to ask her.
I help founders.
I got you.
That's awesome. Andrew won. He just gets a point for that. Because I'm like, oh, no, wait. Now it's on. No, I really, what I do is really quite simple. I help founders elevate their thinking so that they can sort of reframe their vision of success and create a wildly successful practice in life that they love.
Wow. So you really are good at speaking.
Thank you.
I'm sure you've heard that before.
Once or twice.
But yeah, that was pretty good. And it didn't sound rehearsed either.
It's because it's not.
It's not, right? So
And it shouldn't. Like one of the things that we talk about in coaching, and fundamentally, if you are authentic, you will find your audience.
for sure.
And if you tell your story from a place of authenticity, you will never, ever have to sell your story.
Interesting.
So you can use
So that's why we haven't picked a president yet. Quite yet, at least. Because I kind of feel like it's all rehearsed.
There's lots of storytelling happening.
Yeah, right.
Lots of storytelling.
And it's all off of, I don't think any of them can remember anything. So it's all off of teleprompters.
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't feel like, what you just said. Because that was authentic and you can absolutely tell.
Well,
the
thank you.
difference.
I appreciate that.
So how do you get into doing what you do? I mean, do you have a business background?
Dumb
Do you-
luck. No,
I mean, really?
Seriously, I have a very different kind of story. My mother was diagnosed with a mental illness when I was 9. My younger sister had just been born. I'll never forget. My father took me to the hospital, put me on a little stool as she looked over the babies, and I saw her very pink face and her very red hair. And my father's eyes teared up, and he said, "Have you ever seen anything so beautiful?" And I remember thinking, nope, never ever have I seen anything like that, nor do I ever need to. What is all the fuss about? She's lovely. She's turned into a beautiful young woman. But, that was truly the last really happy memory that I can remember, because shortly after that, I remember coming home. I was walking down the steps with my father. Right as we walked in the door, I looked up to him and I said, when is mommy coming home? And he brought me inside. He sat me down. He took my hands in his, and he had a look that I hadn't seen before. And he said, "Sweetie, mommy's not coming home, at least not right now." And then he went in, at 9 years old, he explained to me about how people go to hospitals for their heads. And so for the next 9 years, my life was a spinning wheel of panic attacks and prescription bottles and psychiatric hospitals and relatives and in and out. And my father was in the military until I was in third grade, until like right then. So I think I counted once from the time that I was born until I graduated high school. I don't think I'd ever gone to a school for more than 2 years.
Wow.
So, and I didn't realize that at any point until I really started doing my own work in terms of up-leveling my own success. And what I realized after, so that was sort of how my story began, is at 9 years old, I sort of had to figure out how to take care of myself. And it just so happened all of the grown-ups around me, none of them were particularly well equipped for life or the situation. So the emotional toolbox with which I grew up was empty. And so I literally moved out at 17 on my own, went to junior college, was living with my best friend at the time, went to junior college and got a secretary on how to be a legal certificate because I was going to be a lawyer. That was my thing.
Why did you want to be a lawyer?
I was going to say, there's a lot of drive there bouncing around from school to school. Yep. Is that wired in, you think?
No, I think, look, this is just behaviorally, I think we all model our behavior, right, on sort of the environment. Our brains are just hardwired to create these behavioral models, sort of the scripts that we operate on. And, mine was one of chaos and struggle and adversity. And I think when you experience those things, you, at some level, and I think this is that spark that we all so desperately want to understand about ourselves and certainly about other people, like what separates those people who do more and better, who follow their passion, who can, retire, move to a beach or do work that they like. What is it about those people that really are sort of squeezing the juice out of it in a way that we really all want to, and everybody else? And so for me, that lesson was I learned through what I like to call the science of failure. It's a very effective teacher. And so I literally set out.
Master's in that, actually.
Master's degree, PhD in science failure. At 17, I literally went out and, for me, it's a great question. As I think on it, the answer is debating was the first thing I remember feeling good at. So my family life was just, we'll shortcut the conversation. It was just not awesome. And I was on most days dealing with a crazy person.
Right.
And I had to learn how to avoid some very difficult circumstances, right? I would get woken up at 2:00 in the morning. The lights would be turned on and the entire house would have to be cleaned because a piece of lint was on the carpet.
Whoa.
So, things weren't what I would call normal and healthy in my house. And so I didn't get to go out and do the things that kids do because my mother just wasn't in a particularly good place mentally. And I had a baby sister and a dad that was working, and that was not particularly great or stable.
So you grew up way fast.
So I grew up very, very fast. And so I remember I think I was a freshman in high school. I joined the debate team. I don't even remember why I did it. I think it was because it was at school and it was something that I would be allowed to do.
You didn't have to go home.
I didn't have to go home, and I didn't have to get permission to join the cheer team or this team or that team. Those things were just for whatever reason not cool in my house, and so for whatever reason this was part of the daily schedule, and I could do it. And it turned out I was pretty good at it. And if you're good at that and you sort of fall in that circle, being a lawyer seems like a really cool thing to do.
Right. You get paid to debate with people.
You get paid to debate with people. And I had to go home and do that for free. This way, all right, there was at least some promising future in it for me. And maybe I could actually get the other side to see I spent my entire, half my childhood learning how to communicate with crazy.
Right.
And what I realized at one point, I was talking with one of my coaches about just why I'm so fascinated with the behavior, and in particular the behavior of business. And I realized it's because I was dealing with it every day of my life. Like what would be okay today, what wouldn't be okay today, trying to
moving target
to create rationale for why we should be able to go do something, or why and so you learn a lot about sort of navigating humanity at its best and its worst when you grow. I mean, I'm not the only one that's grown up with adversity.
Sure.
But I think from that, you get either you fall into that trap, right, where that sort of becomes the path it's the path of least resistance. And we see those examples all the time, and they're super unfortunate. Or in some cases, some part of us says, no, that is not for me.
Right.
I think we see crazy, we're going to take a hard right. We see, unmotivated and unambitious.
I think that happened at the polls last night.
Please take the hard right. Take the hard right.
They just anywhere, just... Anyway.
So I mean, that's how I ended up wanting to be a lawyer. And then when I was 17, I got the legal certificate and got a job at a classy law firm somewhere, and just worked my little hiney off. Did a really good. I remember sitting across from the partner of the firm. I had zero experience, and he was like, "Why should we hire you?" And I was like, "Man, if you have children, have them do debate." Because I was able, one, I had the confidence to communicate that I could get the job done, and you should always be able to deliver on the value every time. But two, I was able to articulate why I was the best person, how I was going to bridge the gap. And so I was just able to get that.
You were 17?
I was 18 at that point, yeah.
And you're talking to the partner.
I was talking to a partner, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
A big law firm.
Kind of like Kurt Brown. Yeah. Another guest we had. It's funny. There are some parallels here, too, to Tony Robbins, who's most people know.
He's much taller than me.
Yeah. What do they call them? Banana hands, and Jack Black called them that. But
and I
you hear a lot of stories growing up with his mom being, I don't know if it was mental health. It was more, I think it was addiction, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I think 8 dads or something.
Yeah. Just having to navigate all. So, man, it's just another example of light coming from dark, right? Tough stuff just makes you better.
I think we all, one of the things, the premise of my work is that if you elevate your thinking, you can elevate your results, right? It's really about mindset and methods, particularly in business. It's true in life.
Sure.
Which is we all develop strategies for coping, right? When I'm a child and crazy is happening in the house, you develop a strategy. Perfection is a really good strategy for managing crazy.
Because you feel like you can control
you can control it if you behave a certain way. Right. If you're, a lot of us grow up, women in particular, right? If you're pleasing, right? If you're pleasing, you get the certainty, right? You get the safety and the security that you want. And so without even knowing it, we develop these habits and these behaviors because they're just coping mechanisms. Our brains are hardwired to figure out how to survive. That's their job, right? Your limbic system, right? The primitive part of your brain is one job. Don't die. Don't die. That's the job. There's just one eensy problem with that. Not dying is not the same as truly living.
Sure.
And most of us experience that feeling at some point in our life. And for me, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I ended up being a business coach. I worked in an estate planning and wealth management firm and started doing marketing and operations. And out of that, started consulting with people. And at the ripe old age of 24, I started my consulting firm. So most people like to go out and get experience and then consult. I thought, hey, this seems pretty fun and I'm kind of good at it.
I'm going to shorten this a little bit.
How about we just shorten that curve and I'll just do it? And the truth is, it was there wasn't even that much thought into it. I was 24. My husband was going through school. He had just quit his job, so we were putting him through cash. We had just bought our first house, and I thought it would be a really good time to start a consulting firm. So I went to my boss, and I was like, how about one day a week I just do this thing from home? Because I'd bought a house an hour away. And he pretty much told me, he's like, absolutely, you're going to be a consultant or you're going to get picked up by some organization. And I was like, no, I love my job. And 3 weeks later, I was like, I really don't like commuting. And people seem to be really willing to pay me to help them market their practices. And he was like, to his credit, super supportive. And he was like, go for it. So I literally took $5,000. At the time, it seemed perfectly logical. Right. In hindsight, it seems ridiculous. I was putting a husband through school. We were paying cash. I'd quit my job. I had taken $5,000, bought a paper mache. I call it the paper mache desk from Home Depot, because if you leave the water glass on it too long, it bubbles up. And mine did. I have a perfect imprint of my memory of that desk and the bubble and a computer. And I thought, well, I'm pretty employable. If this doesn't work out, I'll just go get another job. And
what type of consulting did you open up to do?
So we started just doing business coaching. I worked originally with estate planning attorneys. Because the wealth management space was the space that I worked in. So I worked with estate planning attorneys, CPAs, insurance advisors, and financial advisors. And then really within the first couple of years, the financial services sort of arm really just, the gravity was there. There was a lot of appetite for it. There was obviously there's a lot of money there, and a lot of people who are trying to do good work, but who aren't necessarily great at running a business. And it's also a place where doing well can create a lot of opportunity to do good, and you can build a really successful business. But that in and of itself, as you know, is a very different enterprise than being a great barbecue man or a great financial advisor. And so I just I love the business of business. It is like a chess game to me. I don't know why. It's a level playing field. We have access to the same people, the same resources. There are good people and with tech, there's good people everywhere. So why is it that Tony Robbins has an island and some people are sitting on steps why is that? And it's ultimately our thought set. And so I built a super successful consulting firm. I sold it to a Fortune 200 company. Super fortunate. I got to sit on the executive team for 4 years. I learned so much about how Fortune 200 companies run that I decided I no longer needed to work for one. Left that, traveled around for a year, went to join a company called United Capital, which is a large independent financial planning firm, and had a phenomenal experience there. Got to build out the national blueprint for like the business model for all their offices. Which was great, and the client experience, which is one of my favorite things. So really about the behavior of advice and how to get advisors to give it better and how to get clients to hear it and follow it better. Right. And so at the apex of that, we were doing our third round of private equity, and I had to sign off on all of the deals and acquisitions to make sure that they would integrate into the model appropriately. And at that point, looked at my 2 little children and realized maybe this was not what I wanted to be doing for the next 5 to 7 years of my life, right? With that third round of equity obviously comes, right, the next big round of work. And having done an acquisition, having done an earnout, I was pretty clear on what that would entail. And so that was just one of those moments in life where you take a hard left. And at the apex of my career, I walked away from it all and moved to a beach in Costa Rica.
Jeez, why Costa Rica?
Because it seemed pretty awesome.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So now let's just make sure all of this, she very casually talked about her experience.
Right.
She was the boss. And not only that, it was the world of old white dudes.
So I actually wanted to talk about that.
You know what I mean?
No, it's rich old white dudes, if you want to be really honest.
Rich old white dudes.
When you started working for the law firm, what year was that?
Oh my God. Well, I'm 47 now. So I would have been 17, 18, so 30 years ago. So 1990. Yeah, I graduated high school in 91. So it would have been 92, 93.
Which makes what you were doing even more impressive.
No, and it's funny.
There was no women doing that.
No.
But it's funny because, and this is one of those things when we talk about our thinking, which is, like, in hindsight, I can't even believe that I did what I did. And I remember someone, I think it's the biggest compliment anyone has ever given me. And he said to me, he said, I understand now why you always accomplish what you set out to do. And I was like, oh, this should be good. Like, I would like to know why. Like, I don't feel like I always accomplish it, but hey, give it to me. And he was like, it never occurs to you that you can't.
Wow.
And I realized that when I get an idea or an intention around something and I lock onto it, that's it. Not that I don't have the same fear, uncertainty, doubt, anxiety, stress. I call it Foodus, right? The ugly brother of Judas. Right? Those ugly voices show up in my head
like
too.
7-0 right now.
Just stop keeping track.
It's crazy. What? Will you repeat that? What do you call it? Foodus?
Foodus. Fear, uncertainty, doubt, anxiety, stress. I call it the ugly brother of Judas.
I can't even write.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow.
Yeah. Now I don't even remember what I was saying.
Sorry.
We're having too much fun.
You're talking the compliment about, like, it never occurs to you that you can't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like when you think about it, we've all had that moment where we just got an idea, an intention. I'm going to start a barbecue restaurant. I'm going to start a firm.
It's a saying, like, ignorance is bliss, right? Like, you don't know what you don't know. That's how all entrepreneurs are, right? As you get
ADHD helps too.
Well, as you get into it, like, if you knew what you were up against, you wouldn't do it. Like,
right.
how many guests have said, I went to Google and I learned how to do this. I had no formal training.
Yep.
And they said, if I look back now, knowing what it takes to run this business, I would not have started.
Absolutely right.
Now, we talk about this a lot in coaching because I fundamentally believe it to be true. Methods are important, but they're about 20% of success, whereas mindset, the science says, is about 80% of your success. There are 3 fundamental factors to success. Environment, right? There are good countries, bad countries in financial services, right? Different kinds of companies, right? Big firms, little firms. There, places where there are good clients or bad clients. There's skills. You have them or you can acquire them. That's pretty much the easy one. And then there's mindset, right? There's the thinking about what you believe is possible and the quality of your thoughts. And those things, neuroscientists essentially shown, drive 80% of our success and well-being. So when I retired to the beach, I was looking for something. I was just doing all the stuff that I taught people to do, more and better and more and better and more and better and more and better. And I was like the princess and the damn pea, if I'm allowed to say that.
Yes, you can.
Because it can get a lot more colorful, but it won't. Truly, it was like to me, success was, in hindsight, of course, success was a striving for significance. I thought that making a certain amount of money was going to give me meaning. And, I had a beautiful house on the hill. I'd been on the cover of Financial Planning magazine. I'd been named an industry influential. Bloomberg had called and asked me to write a book. Like, these are great things.
Right.
And yet, like that, when you start a business and you kind of younger in your life, you have kind of that spark and that passion, and it drives you. And the why is so much bigger than the what ifs. And to your point, that's when you don't worry about the how, because the how will always stop you if you focus on it. But when you get clear on the what and the why behind it, you really become unstoppable and everything is figure outable. Our job as founders and entrepreneurs or leaders is to keep our mindset in that, what I call success state, as much of the time as possible. And we're hardwired not to live there. Our limbic system, our survival system, our primitive system is designed to keep us alive. So when you have the opportunity to take that risk, to raise that fee, to invest in that new idea, if we're all really honest, the voices in our head can get really loud.
Oh, man. Really loud.
Really loud.
That's really interesting.
And they're not your friends, by the way.
Oh, no.
I would just like to point out, they're not your friends.
That's got to be so much less work to just, I feel like self-doubt, like you said, that's just already in there. Yep. You don't have to find that.
And that's like, we develop these strategies to cope with those underlying feelings because we're not taught to address the feelings. And sorry, guys, right? If you're a guy, in general, feelings is, right, it's like the F word. But at the end of the day, we're all emotional beings, right? Anger is a feeling. Suppressing your feelings creates feelings. And so when we just get really honest with ourselves about what experience we're having in our life or our business, why we're having that, I break it down into mindset, methods, mapping, and momentum, right? I call them the 4 modes of mastery. And if you go through them, you can pretty much figure out just about anything. And then what action we're willing to take. And that requires a level of radical candor with ourselves that, if we're really honest, we don't all carry around with us at all times.
Right. It's really hard. It's scary to have that with yourself, right? Because you have to be like brutally honest to the person looking yourself back in the mirror on what's going on, why stuff isn't happening.
Well,
right?
and look, I am definitely, and you know this, I am not one for making excuses, but the reason that I unretired was because when I retired, I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew man, I had efforted the hell out of this and I was pretty good. And if I couldn't find the joy that I was looking for, then it was just going to have to be found somewhere else. And so we were just going to have, and that took a lot, by the way. It took 6 months of like
We've never talked about that. What was that process like?
Well, and you have a husband there too, right?
It was crazy.
And young kids.
Yeah, like basically what you're talking about involves more people than just yourself.
And this is the underpinning of those stories, and what success for those of us who take that route, what it really means to us is not that it's not great, not that we don't love our work and that we don't bring passion and enthusiasm, but if you're not really careful and you don't understand what's really driving the drive, it can consume you. And that's what happened to me, which was there was always some corner to turn, some accomplishment to be achieved, something that was going to resolve.
Just never enough.
And it was never enough. The P wasn't going away.
Right.
And for me, I just knew somehow, and that's what I had to resolve within myself, was I wasn't going to find it on this path. But that path represented every story that had ever served me and kept me safe. You can be perfect, you can be pleasing as long as you do good work, right? And I was really good at it. To your point, like when I went to debate class and I was good at it, it was the first time that I was like, wow, I feel good. There's no one harshing me. There's no one making me feel inadequate. There's no one diminishing me. I mean, I didn't know it intellectually, but it was a space that I could enter.
You were good at it?
It was a domain of mastery.
Right.
And man, when we all find that place and that flow and that zone, we thrive. And what I realized was that what I thought created my success was actually shrinking it. And that what I had to do was the thing that I was most terrified of doing, which was showing up as me. Like literally just showing up unapologetically. Hey, I went off. I know I'm supposed to be this business expert, but I went off to the beach in Costa Rica and I found out that kind of the quality of your thoughts determines the quality of your experience. So I'm going to take what I've always done that's been really results oriented and very good, which I realized I had actually been coaching all those years, not consulting. Lo and behold, that's why we got the results that we got. I was always like, well, why are we doing it this way? Don't we want different kind of results? Like, don't worry, we're going to need to change something, right? And people would say something and I'd be like, a client would pay me so much money to explain to me why they were doing what they were doing and it was okay. And me just being very simple. I grew up in a trailer park, so I didn't go to Bain or McKinsey or Harvard. I just talk what comes out. And I was like, someone would literally tell me why what they were doing was okay. And I'd be like, so how's that working for you? And then they would be quiet and then they would listen. And I'd be like, okay, we're just going to have honest conversations with people about what they want, what they're getting, and what lives in that gap. And for business owners, founders, like you deal with that every moment of every day. Running a business, leading an organization, whether it's a nonprofit or a country, is a wild swing from exasperation to euphoria and back again. And no one gives you any damn Dramamine. Like you get on and whoa you go. And you love it and you hate it. And some days you're like, what the was I thinking? And then 2 days later, you're like, this is the best thing ever. And
sounds like gambling.
If you can't like that, that's the game. Like owning your mind is the secret to your greater success. It is not about, not that your barbecue isn't amazing. Like you've got rule number 1 for me, deliver massive value. Rule number 2, run an excellent business. Rule number 3, enjoy the hell out of the ride. Otherwise, why, like, isn't that the point? So like, why do we settle came the big question for me. And that led me to, I literally started Googling the science of success and happiness. Like I'm that retarded girl. Like, oh, I'm just going to Google the obvious stuff, right? Started reading articles. I'm like way too honest, right? Started reading articles.
No, it's great. I missed that about society.
Then I started reading these crazy like psychiatric papers and medical journals and neuroscience stuff is crazy boring. Like you have to really, and then I was like, oh my God. I'm doing this to myself. Like that was the mind-blowing part. When I read that the secret to success was 80% mindset, and that mindset was really nothing more than the stories, right? The thoughts and perceptions you have about the world that you're experiencing. And that you can control those stories. I was like, oh, I can fix this. This is great. Let's go do this.
One of my favorite quotes, she said, the events only have the meaning you give them, right?
Yeah. Their events have no meaning except the meaning that you give them. The biggest discovery in behavioral science in 100 years is that events don't create anxiety, they don't create stress, they don't create fear, they don't create the voices in our head do. We give events meaning, right? Whether the meaning is good or bad is based on our internal stories. And
what a fantastic freaking point to talk about as we're sitting here waiting for election results, right?
Oh, goodness gracious. Yes.
Because, I mean, we've joked about some of the stories, like people on both sides are telling themselves what the outcome of this election means to them. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like what is going on in your mind that you genuinely believe that is what's going to happen?
That's interesting. I remember, like, I woke up this morning, 5:15 to come and cook, and watching the news last night, which is literally the only day of the year that I will turn on a news channel because they're just ridiculous. But I woke up this morning just thinking like, oh man, today's going to be nuts. And then I walk outside and it was just quiet and dark. And I'm like, wait.
Guess what? It was the exact same as 2 days ago.
Nothing's going to change. Like we're all this, like it is incredible how powerful our minds are. And with the information that's being thrown our way, like it is hard to filter it out and realize like, this is no different than the last 200 years. Like there's a whole lot of things between us and the president of the United States that matter a lot more to our daily lives. It's okay. Like chill out. But it's crazy how just 2 hours of watching, election coverage just makes you think shit's about to go down.
Well, one, they get paid to do that, right?
For sure.
There's no money in boring.
The attention economy.
The attention economy. But the other thing is, and I think this is one of there's a lot of study and research around it, and I do fundamentally believe that it's true, at least experientially, is that internet and TV and the technology has, and I think you see this in the economy as well, sort of created this polarization.
For sure.
And if you look at the polarization, it really is just a function of human behavior, which is what it all boils down to. Because it's really easy for any of us to look at the other side, the other party, the other perspective, and man, judgment is a very reliable strategy. Trust me, there are days where I look at the TV and I'm like, oh, and I'm like, okay, check it, girl. Because at the end of the day, if something bothers you, it's not going to be comfortable, barbecue guy. But here's the thing. If something bothers you, it's because it has a place to land.
For sure.
Which means, right, like whatever's going on, to your point, it bothers us because the story in our heads about it, right? There's, in psychology, they call it IRRs, or internal representations of realities. I call them stories. Way easier.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
If you grew
Seems
up,
easier.
right, like for me, one of my stories was that life had struggle, right? My parents' marriage had incredible struggle. Financials were incredible struggle. Just any semblance of security and safety came with struggle. Right. So lo and behold, in my early years, did my success come easy? No, I had to work really, really hard for it. I had to effort for it. And so if we tell ourselves the story, right, you have to work hard and long to be successful. Or if we tell ourselves the story, if this person wins, or if that candidate, like those are just stories because we need stories. There are survival systems.
Right.
Like that's what our brains absorb 11 million bits of information a second. It can consciously process about 40 bips, which means that the other 10 million or so goes somewhere. And there's a part of our brain called the reticular activating system, and its job is in like 1/5 of a second to filter all of that. And based on your stories, tell you how you feel about it. And then when you think about technology and you look at camps and politics or anything else, when you look at Facebook, it's serving you the ads that are based on your preferences and likes.
Right.
When you get the news, it's based on your preferences as likes. So the way that the news cycle is actually working is it's feeding us news that feeds our stories.
Sure.
Which by definition eliminates objectivity because you're not getting sort of that central space of news. You have, irrespective of your party or your political affiliation, I watch a variety of news channels just to try and keep, I don't watch a lot of TV, but right now I'm obviously paying attention.
Sure.
But I just watch the channels. I literally told my husband the other day, I'm like, I'm not sure this really qualifies as news anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Reputable channel, right? I'm like, I'm like, I'm not necessarily saying I even disagree with the opinion, but as an objective audience member, what happened to my news? Like, where is my objective, unbiased, unopinionated news? I'm like searching. I just don't watch TV. I just, if I want my news, I know what I believe to be reliable sources, and I get what I need quickly, and I move on. And I think to your point, we can get caught up in all this stuff, and we really can, because it might feed some story that we have. I'm a victim of something. This person's going to save me from being a victim. That's the stuff that I think we got to watch.
Well, and our brains, you've talked a lot about it, and I've learned a lot from you about this kind of stuff, but we are being bombarded internally with negativity as well. So not only are we watching it, we're hearing it, but then what's going on in our brain, what are the numbers? We talk about it a lot, and I always have to write them down because I can't remember them. Yep. But she's got it.
We have on average about 60,000 thoughts a day. My husband will tell you I have many more.
I was going to say that seems low.
I know. There's a lot going on in here. I have like 5 conversations going on in my head at any time. We have 60,000 thoughts a day. The science shows about 80% of them are negative. And of those 80%,
I thought it would be higher.
95% of those run on a constant replay loop. So if I were to literally take the loop in your head, record it, and play it, we'd all be, if we're all being radically honest, right? We'd all be like, oh my gosh, that's really harsh. Like we would never talk to our friends or our family the way that we talk to ourselves. We would never tolerate it. Here's the thing that blew my mind when I was reading this one day. Those voices in your head, you're having a conversation with them, right? Like, hey, your barbecue this, or your advice that, or or you don't deserve the fee, or so-and-so, what. Who is that you're having a conversation with, was my question. Holy hell. Who am I talking to? Okay, I've got it. Right, and that right, and what you're really doing, that's like the bridge to your subconscious. Like, that's how your stories show up. If you grow up in a world One of my clients was super successful, had a 7-figure practice, and had just grown and then hit a plateau. Just hit a plateau. Couldn't figure it out. Wasn't satisfied. He's like, I come in every day, I pull the lever, I make more money. Just,
Right.
I know, high quality problem to have, right? And we're having this conversation about what's his next level of success and what it means. And it turns out that he grew up in an environment where money was discussed in a way that it was frowned upon, right? People with money, men that made money, weren't there for their families. They weren't at the Boy Scout meetings. And the implication was strongly, right? The comments about the cars and, well, they must have worked over the weekend, so, they couldn't be there. So the strong implication, and thus the stories that this person formed was, right, that a certain amount of money and a certain amount of success meant that you didn't care about your family. And so literally just your subconscious stories run the show 95% of the time.
Right.
So you think that you're making conscious decisions that support your success, and yet you've discounted a fee. You have not held a vendor to a standard. You've tolerated an employee issue for far too long. You've, tried too much marketing, and you're not focused and clear in your message, even though you know better, right? Like all of these things that we tolerate. Like if you're listening and you're a business owner in particular, or you're an executive or a leader, you have control over some domain, all of that frustration, and this is not going to be comfortable, falls at our feet. Because we ultimately show up every day, make the assessment, create the perception, have the thoughts, make the decision, and take the actions that create the results. We're the common denominator. And so when I realized that, I was like, oh, okay. This is disturbing, but this is a good thing, because if this is how it works, then I can learn how to do better.
So were you going through this while you still were working? Or was this happening when you were in Costa Rica? Like, did you get to that point in Costa Rica?
Well, I think when we moved to Costa Rica, I had a lot of free time on my hands. And so aside from running, I thought it'd be really cool to run the PTA. So that was my first project. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And it was the super, because remember, I had really been consumed with work for all these years. So to me, that was just the best time to be at my kids' school all the time and be in their classroom and running PTA. I've been listening about 3 years, by the way, but it was a lot of fun. And I still totally love being involved, but nonprofit volunteers, when you're trying,
Right.
that was a very interesting experience. No, we had a ton of fun. When I went to Costa Rica, I really was sitting around reading about this and reading papers, and that's how I happened on all of that. And that was the moment where I just thought, okay, if this is how my brain works, if my brain is the key to success, right, happiness, well-being, whatever it is I'm looking for, and I understand how my brain works, then I am, once again, because remember, I'm a perfectionist and a control freak by upbringing, then what do I have the
PTA.
opportunity to do, right? Oh, wait, now I can pull all the levers and put myself back in control, which was a really interesting experience, because as a coach, you're not only having the conversation with the voices in your head, you're having a conversation with the coach in your head all the time. Where you're like, oh, what are you doing right now? Oh, you're doing that thing. You're doing that thing where you spin your wheels and you're like, okay, got to stop that. So you've got the voices in your head on one side, you've got the coach of you in the other, you've got your actual coach back here. Yeah, it can get crowded in there sometimes.
It's amazing how the same person, the same brain, can be either amazing or the opposite, right? Like it is just kind of a flip of a switch. Like you have all the tools you need to be successful already there. It's just how do you stop listening to that side? And that's, maybe I'm not talking about it the right way, but it's really interesting because we talk to a lot of people that, at least I do. It's like, I can't believe, like, you started a restaurant. Like, weren't you scared? And it's the one thing that, no, I guess I never even really doubted it, but that is the main difference. It's really just being able to say, because anybody can be an entrepreneur.
Yep.
But most people can't overcome that small hurdle of
Self-doubt,
risk. Like, how do I take care of my family? Like you said, just it all. So it is crazy, that fine line between whatever you want and desire and just being stuck.
And what's crazy is the only thing that separates that is your brain.
Right.
It's what you think about it.
It's not talents. It's not skills. It's not opportunity.
Right.
It is the thoughts in your head.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is the sick trick, right? Your brain is trying to help you, right? That survival system is necessary. Sure. If I'm about to step out into a street or someone approaches me with a baseball bat, thank you very much. I would like you to work. The problem is modern day life is not the same as caveman life, right? So the response that I have to traffic, or this is one of my favorites, your largest client or your largest supplier calls, leaves a message, and you don't know why. What's always the first response?
Something's wrong.
Something's wrong. I'm going to get fired. Why?
Yeah, whenever Annie calls, it's always bad.
Right? Because you're
bad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because your survival system is always on high alert for any threat, risk, anything that could possibly derail you, cause you harm.
No news is good news. Quote.
And when it doesn't know uncertainty, which is why you see so much, irrespective of your political position, it's why you see so much sort of emotion right now, is because our brains don't, like, if you remember that commercial back from I'm Dating Myself where they did the eggs in the pan, like, this is your brain on drugs.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
This is people's brain on uncertainty.
Right.
Our brains hate uncertainty because uncertainty equals risk, and our brains are hardwired to avoid risk. And so people are desperately clinging to whatever they think will give them the certainty that they want. And
that's why so often, I mean, something you've taught us, and now we get to help, all the people in the coaching program, but when there's an issue, it's like, play out worst case scenario for me, right? Because we have this story in our head, but as soon as you start actually out loud telling someone like what worst case scenario is, by the end of talking, they're usually like, oh yeah, it's not that bad. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like, before you go through that practice, you have this story built up in your brain, and you can't necessarily pinpoint it, but like, there are so many things that are wrong and scary. But when you go through the practice of actually laying out, like, what is the worst case scenario, right? Like, what is that? Okay. And they're like, oh.
Well, and what you're doing there, and you mentioned this, and this is the powerful thing, and this is why I'm retired, because I was like, oh, this is a game changer. I have to tell people about this. Like, that mindset really is the bridge to bridge that gap between what you have and what you want. And I think, to your point, when you realize that it is the quality of your thoughts, most of us in some way, shape, or form get paid to think. And when you get paid to think, the quality of your thoughts matters immensely, right? Immensely. And we spend a lot of time honing our barbecue sauce, or honing our financial expertise, or our coaching expertise, or our HR expertise, or whatever it may be. How much time do we spend honing our mind? How much time do we even spend owning it? Like, how many times have we driven down the road, ended up in our driveway, and said, how did I get here? Like, you were moving, but you were having a conversation with those voices in your head. That's your autopilot. And
for me, it's in the shower. Every morning, it's like, hold on. Have I washed my hair? Did I wash my face? Like, where am I at in the process right now?
And so when you recognize that that's happening all of the time, like, awareness is the secret sauce. Like, oh, those voices in my head aren't usually my friend. I can acknowledge them. I can observe and listen to them. It puts you in the position to do the thing that I think is the fundamental secret sauce of coaching, which is what I call reframing, which is when you can teach your brain to think about the same thing in a way that is more empowering and better serves you, you will get a better result every single time.
And that's possible.
For example, largest client calls you and Andrew is convinced, oh my God, something's happened. He's upset. He's going to fire me. Reframe. Andrew, why did that client hire you?
Because he trusts you and values your experience and all that stuff.
So that client is doing the very thing that he hired you to do, that you committed to be there for.
Yeah.
And your initial response is, holy shit, something bad's going to happen.
I'm about to get canned.
Right? Could it be possible that the client is in fact calling you because you are his trusted advisor?
That seems like such a monumental ask. Right? They're like such a hard mountain to climb. To flip that switch.
It's a massive mountain to climb.
Right.
A part of it is when you reframe it, because what happens is I call it behind the curtain, right? The voices, that subconscious processing doesn't usually serve you. It serves you up safety. Right. When you can get it out in a conversation, then your prefrontal cortex, the rational logical thinking part of your brain, the part that usually aligns the tongue in your mouth with the tongue in your shoes so that you can get what you actually want, that needs to be... That voice needs to be have a seat at the table. not just us in the silence. So anytime you're making a life decision or you're in a situation where you're like, why does this keep happening? I'm really trying to break out my business to the next level, or I'm really trying to deal with this relationship issue and I just can't get through it, is because Einstein said no problem can be solved with the same consciousness that created it. Like, we're showing up every day with the same frame. That's Einstein. He gets credit for that one.
So you remembered it.
Yeah.
Wow.
If your frame is, I'm a trusted advisor and of course I'm going to be here when my clients call me. I can't wait to answer the phone because this is go time, people. This is what I train for. And when you can get it out, hey, Andrew, is it really true that your client's probably calling you because there's a problem? Or is it much more like that he's calling you because you, as his trusted advisor, are the person that he thinks to call so that you can add that value? And Andrew's going to say, yeah. And when you get yourself to a frame where, one, the voices in your head aren't hiding behind the curtain, they're just out there, and your conscious brain goes, hey, that doesn't make any sense. Of course he's calling me. And by the way, even if he is really upset about something, that's okay too, because part of being a trusted advisor is being willing to have the tough conversations with my client. Right. That's actually what I think defines a trusted advisor, is being able to communicate what a client needs to hear, not necessarily what they want to hear, in a way that they still have the trust equity in you to ultimately believe that you have their best intent, even if they disagree with you.
That was awesome marriage advice right there. Right? Having those conversations, like the ability to understand intent and not jump to conclusion, but to have that conversation. Yeah.
I'm good at that. I'm really good at it.
Well, think about all of the stories that we tell ourselves in relationships.
Right.
Right? My husband doesn't put his clothes in the hamper. There's a story there. What does that mean to someone? It means
your husband's an asshole.
He's a jerk. He doesn't love me. He doesn't like whatever. And what it usually means is he just doesn't care as much about the clothes being in the hamper.
Right.
But
there's a story behind that.
There's always a story.
And that's the important thing, is to try to understand. And that's where that open line of communication has to happen, to be able to learn what that story is. Right? Because if you never learn what the story is, you continue to do it, they continue to get mad, and you're just in this never ending loop.
Well, and we have this tendency when we're uncomfortable and we're not getting what we want, we have this tendency to tell ourselves this very popular thing. The voices in our head really like this one. And it is, if you would just fill in the blank, then I would feel better and everything would be okay. And man, that's a really great strategy, right? If you would just do what I want you to do, except that we all have that story. And so it just can't possibly be. Is we're constantly putting our expectations on other people. We're putting our assumptions, we're putting our stories on them, and we're not really creating a non-judgmental space to have the conversation about what's really behind it, which is the story. So while I am by no means perfect, as my husband will be happy to tell you, on a really good day, instead of going at him about something, like, hey, why did you, I will have that moment of presence to say to myself, hey, husband, this happened, and the story that I'm telling myself about it is that, that you really don't care that X, Y, or Z. And what that does, and you can do the same thing in client conversations, right? Which is when a client is unhappy about something, your first job is to create a space of non-judgment. Right. And the truth is, if we're really honest, we don't go into 95% of our actions from a place of non-judgment. We go in with an opinion that we want to convince the other party of, and by the time the fifth word is out of their mouth, the voices in our head are calculating the defense and framing the story that, like, we've already answered the question. We're just waiting for them to be quiet long enough for us to prove that we're right. Right. That, if we're being honest, that's what a lot of our interactions is. There's only one problem with that. It doesn't serve the relationship. Right. Avoiding the conversation with your team member doesn't serve the business, the client, the outcome, or the relationship, right? Getting upset with your spouse about something instead of creating a space where you can talk about it does not serve the relationship. But our stories keep us shrunk and they keep us small. If I do this, right? And the truth is, because our strategies don't usually get us what we want, right? As business owners, why do we come in and do the same thing every day if it's not getting us the result that we want? It logically makes no sense whatsoever. And yet we do it.
Very interesting. What about the flip side of the coin? What about being content with not doing more?
When did we talk about doing more?
Well, or
there's the story.
Maybe. Cause it's funny. That's my problem. So many people they want, why don't you open more restaurants? You could do this, you could do that. And it is, I have to have the conversation in my head, like, I'm really close to where I want to be. Like, I want balance. Like, I want to be able to go to kids' games, and I don't want to work anymore, like any harder. So, but it is really hard to get over that.
Well,
Being okay with that.
So that right there, that question was why Aventus was created. I finally was able to answer that question through her.
Right. And I mean, that's, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm
so
not
there's
explaining it
if we want to have some fun with that, there's potentially a couple of stories there.
right.
One is that more is the expectation. Like there is a societal story. So we frame our stories, right? If you want like the basic behavioral lesson, like between around 0 to 7, our brains create these stories. They're like the shortcuts for processing all that information. Like in this world, here's how we're going to survive. We get that from our family and we get that from society. Our society, without question, sets forth the idea that more is better. I believe that more isn't better. I believe that better is better. And for some people, at some point, that is more. And for some people, it's not. So there's just this general expectation that all of us have that we're supposed to keep going. We're striving for some said thing. And most of the time, and this is true of a lot of founders, we don't exactly know why. Yes, we have this idea or this passion, but like why we have that drive and why we can't stop on Friday night and set it down and be totally present with our kids, which you can, by the way.
Right.
But you have to learn how to silence the voices in your head. That's what it's all about, is owning your mind. And to me, that's one story. The other story is, and I think this is the big fake. And this is the reason I unretired, was to teach founders that you really can build a wildly successful business and a life that you love. You just have to reframe the way that you think about like there's a story in your mind somewhere that more businesses equals more work, more complexity.
Mine's untapped potential. That's all I heard my whole life. Right. So it's just like, what am I not doing?
So this is good. So
I mean?
I have a son, right? He's high energy, high intelligence. I would not say that the Box O School is maybe the right structure to leverage all of that.
Right.
But here's the thing: like when you think about that, what does it mean to you? Like I'm a coach, right? So
it's negative.
Here's the thing: I'm a coach. I do this for a living.
No, yeah.
I just want to have one of those confessions of a coach stories. Here we go. So I do this for a living, right? And again,
Right.
like I'm not like I'm not a parent therapist. I'm not a marriage therapist. I only coach in places I feel like I have domain and mastery and expertise, right? I'm a business coach. So, but it all applies, right? It's all personal work at the end of the day. If you run a business or you're a leader and you want to up level, like the strategy is out there, right? But that next vision of success always starts inside in terms of what you think is possible.
Right.
So I'm trying to teach my kid this, right? So he's very bright, but the system is maybe not his thing. So I'm always telling him about all this potential. Just like I'm sure, right? Best of intentions.
Right.
He comes home one day. He's not in a great mood. This was maybe a year and a half or so ago. We're in Costa Rica, and he's got, I don't know if it was a D or an F. And he's like really bright. So, okay, he's really upset. And I'm like, you want to talk to me about why you're so upset? I genuinely believe he's going to tell me he's not going to get to have his sleepover or get his iPad that weekend, and his life is ruined. That's what I'm expecting, right? And he's 12 years old. He stops, crocodile tears well up in his eyes. And he says, "You're going to be disappointed in me." And I was like, I'm like the worst parent ever. And then I set the voices in my head down. And I thought, oh my God. Maybe I don't completely suck at this, because I created a space in which a 12-year-old boy could, upon my simply asking him, "What has you so upset about this?" could somehow simply say to me with emotion, "Honestly, I feel like you're going to be disappointed in me."
Yeah, not being scared to tell you that. That's a big deal.
And I was like, okay, whatever else you don't get right in this moment, please note that somehow that seeped through all of the imperfection, right? I cannot claim to be a perfect parent. The model of parenting that I got was truly tragic.
It'd be so hard for a lot of parents to come to that conclusion that fast.
I was going to say,
right.
that right there
That's the difference.
That's
it'd be
a
like, I'm
huge
such
moment.
an asshole that my kid is scared that I'm going to let him down, or that I'm that he's letting me down.
And we go down this judgment and the shame cycle of, I'm a bad parent. I did this wrong. I did that wrong. I did, and it's really easy because, have you done crap wrong? Yeah.
Yes.
Sure you have. So it's really easy to start highlighting all of that stuff.
Sure.
And so that's the thing I like that we talk a lot about with coaching is it's not that you're ever going to get rid of those thoughts or those feelings because we are human. And so the goal of that is never to eliminate them. It's to learn to recognize them quickly and then set them down.
You can significantly shrink them. Here, this is my personal theory. I believe that they can get really, really quiet. You will face very little resistance when you are sitting in the status quo. When you hit the up level, when you think about, do I want to go bigger? What's the next level for the practice? Whatever that, when you go to that next level, when you go to up level, you will hit your head on the ceiling of whatever is next for you. That's what I call resistance. And I think it's feedback, and I think feedback is your friend because it essentially says to you, this is the work that you need to do to get your environment, your skill, or your mindset to the level it needs to be to get the kind of result that you want. Because at the end of the day, when I look at other people and their success, I have learned not to judge them because I know one thing is true. They have what they have because they did what they did.
Wow, yeah.
And every one of us has the potential. That's the chessboard. Every one of us has the potential at this moment. It's America. Might be a challenging time in America, but it is still America where you can at any moment go out, take your idea, and apply some effort in a way that can make your life radically unrecognizable. And that was truly, I think, to Andrew's point, like when you start a business, you almost always do it for a why. You love the idea of creating a joint where people can come and really have that special place. You love the idea of giving people the financial confidence and comfort and peace of mind that comes from knowing they have a trusted advisor, managing their wealth so they can do the work and live the life they want. And at the end of the day, that's all we all want. We all want to get up. We want to have happy careers or happy businesses. And I call it the 5 freedoms of limitless advisors, or if you're a founder, you can call it 5 freedoms of founders, which is 1, do work with purpose on your terms. My terms are 25 hours a week from a beach in Costa Rica right now, Park City, It's winter. But my terms are, my business has to work from anywhere in the world because I just don't like the idea of having to go to one place every day that's just not my gig. Those are my terms. Andrew's terms are different, I've got clients and their terms where I want to make $300,000 a year working 30 hours a week and taking Fridays off and laughing with my kids. Great. I've got clients whose, terms are $10 million businesses and great. What are your terms? But I ultimately believe that, to your point, we all have these stories, and those stories represent exactly where we are. We are all experiencing the level of possibility our brain has decided is ours based on every ounce of history, environment, background, every story we ever heard, this is it for our brain. And so in order to up-level our experience, we have to up-level our thinking. To your point, we have to reframe. The story around the relationship, the story around, you can actually double the size of this business in half the time. Now, there's methods and strategies to that, but your brain won't even allow you to see them until it is in that, what I call that success state. We talked about that example of how you reframe something. One of my clients, who's a prominent thought leader, had called me, and one of his key employees, probably his key employee, had given notice. Now, this is not cool for any of us, but for this person who is particular brain power, replacing that skill set was going to be some work.
Right.
So there was a long conversation about, the intellectual, analytical side of all of that. And then I simply asked him the question. I said, okay. I said, can I ask a question? He said, yeah. I said, what would it take? I said, this is going to feel really uncomfortable, but I just want you to think through this one before you answer. And he said, okay. And I said, what would it take to make this the best thing that ever happened to the business? And this person, who's really, really intelligent, has a lot to say, was uncharacteristically quiet for a while. Truly.
Wow.
Because I had simply, one of my favorite sayings is, if you ask better questions, you will get better answers. If you're saying to your brain, how am I going to get X, Y, or Z done? Your brain's like, oh my God, I don't know. How are we going to get X, Y, or Z? And do you hear the story there? The story is, this is hard, this is bad, this is difficult. If you say to your brain, what will it take to? Your brain is a curiosity problem-solving machine. Those subconscious thoughts they're always there, but they're primed the way that you prime them. And if you're constantly saying to yourself, things are always working out for me. Andrew was like, I always say that. Things are always working. My daughter now is 9 years old, and you know what she says? It makes me so happy. If you walk around our life, you will actually hear her say, well, of course that happened. Things are always working out for us. I'm like, yes, girl, you got it, right? Like, it's rubbing off.
So optimistic.
And so look, that view of life is the greatest gift I can give her. And here's the thing, it doesn't mean she's not going to be smacked down. My husband thinks that I am just uncharacteristically optimistic. Here's my attitude. It's very simple. I would rather choose to believe the best and be wrong than believe the worst and be right. In either case, I'm going to end up in the same spot, but I'm going to feel a hell of a lot better my way than yours. That's just my choice.
Right. It's funny. It doesn't feel like a choice sometimes. Right. And that's what, but it is. And it's just, you just have to convince yourself of that. I heard somebody say once, it's so much more work to be like, you don't have to do anything to be sad and negative. Like you said, it's just kind of, that's just what's naturally there. But if you want to be happy, you got to be intentional about it.
Well, I think that's the challenge. Like, that for me was the frustration. I think we all feel like, right, you get overwhelmed, especially when you run businesses.
Right.
But it's a function of state. So I talked about the 4 M's, right? Mindset we've talked about, right? If you want to elevate your experience, you have to start by owning your mind. Think up, as I like to say. The second is mapping. What Andrew will tell you this, likes to say this probably, I don't know how many times a week. When your vision is clear, your decisions are easy. Not necessarily comfortable, not necessarily convenient, but they're easy, right? I had an employee once, she was amazing. I loved her, clients loved her. Turns out no one on the team loved her. Not a team player. Every time I went off on a trip.
That's a tough one.
Yep. So I came back, and like a couple of times, so we had the talk, like, hey, this, like, one of our core values in this company is teamwork. Literally, teamwork makes the dream work. Says it right there. Kind of a big deal around here.
Right.
So I'm going to really need you to, right, get with the program. Not a problem. Couple more trips, couple more conversations. I come back, it's happened, like, here we are again. So I have that, the pit in your stomach where you're like, oh, you're going to make me do it, aren't you? Do I really write all the voices? And I was like, no, of course I have to do it. Like, it wasn't even a question. Like, the knowing, not the pulling the trigger, took a couple of minutes, but the knowing was instantaneous.
Sure.
If teamwork is a core value, someone is not a team player, they consistently show up as not a team player, you've given them every opportunity to be a team player, and they choose not to, they're just not on the right team, right? They are a solo contributor. They need to be in that kind of role. And, right, she was given the invitation to find that path. Now my stock, it was not the intent, but what I realized afterwards, and that was I was in my 20s at the time, it was a super valuable lesson. My stock with the rest of the team went through the roof because I had put my money where my mouth was,
Sure.
right? I had done the uncomfortable thing because it aligned with my values. The tongue in my mouth and the tongue in my shoes had walked in the same direction. And when that happens, the magic happens. The problem is we do a lot of, I want to create this kind of experience. I want to create this kind of business. I want to create these kind of clients. I want to create this kind of life. I want to take this many days off. But the decisions and the choices that we make on a daily basis simply don't support those outcomes. And it's because we suffer from this crisis of confidence, that fear, the uncertainty, the doubt, the I'm an imposter, I can't charge that fee, right? If I take that idea to the boardroom, if I start that business, and those voices in our head get so loud that they create a background noise that it puts us in that survival state. And if you look at America, the research says that we spend 70% of our time or more in a stress state on a daily basis. Stress is the number one disease in the world. Like, doctors actually have acknowledged that because it is, right, the origin of all, right, sort of chronic diseases. And yet we know this. We are, right, the richest, most technologically advanced country, wealthiest country in the world, and yet we have the highest incidences of all the bad things. Right. I don't have to name them all. Why is that? It makes no sense whatsoever.
That's true. Why is that? I mean, really, I know so many people that, like, if their calendars aren't full, they don't feel like they're just busy workers. We
are all chasing stories. We are human doings, not human beings. Like, I got really good at doing more and more. Man, I was an efficiency expert. I was a bit like, I could build you a hyper efficient business. I could build you an amazing, like, we could just all the way down hone that craft. But the problem with more and better is there's always a more and better. Like if the
There's
goal
always something else.
if the goal is the striving in and of itself, then the struggle that comes with the striving will always be there. And so we have to change. Like ultimately the gap between what we know and what we do, we have to bridge that behavior gap. And that's change. And change is our brains are hardwired against it, which means that the only way to overcome it is to create a higher level of consciousness, not necessarily in a spiritual woo-woo sense, just in a, hey, you know what? Look, I'm all about the ROI. Like that. I mean, I love the vision and all that, but I'm all about the ROI. And here's what I know. There's no ROI in negative thinking. There's just not. So every time I have a thought, I'm like, oh, here I go again. There's no ROI in this. There's a lot of ROI in figuring out what there's ROI in. Like, hey, what is the problem I'm really trying to solve here?
That's return on investment, just in case.
Good job.
Right? Just in case.
There you go. Yeah. So we tell, like, that's the issues. We're all chasing these stories at some level, right? If more, right? If you get the house, if you get the car, if the business hits 7 figures or 10 figures or X number, if you have, right? If you have 10 barbecue restaurants, you'll be happier than if you have 1 barbecue restaurant. And it's just not true. Like my job as a coach is never to define someone's vision of success or happiness or wealth or well-being. My job is to help them strip down the stories so that they have greater clarity about what their whys are personally, professionally, right? And physically, emotionally, spiritually, relationally, financially, right? Communally, like whatever's important to people is how do we create a path of greater ease, less effort, and greater enjoyment. And it's what I call taking inspired action, which is very different than efforted action. And we've all done efforted action. We work hard and we work long and we stress and we struggle. And you can get there. I did it. Like you can really get there. But what I learned on the beach in Costa Rica is never, ever be afraid of hard work, but never assume that it's required. Like that's what I teach my kids. Like never assume that it's required. Like we are so hardwired that the early bird gets the... I built a 7-figure business in under 2 years, working 20 hours a week from the beach in Costa Rica.
What's your goal right now?
I want to build a $25 million company in 25 hours a week. Wow. Because I didn't have a goal. And I was like, oh, I did this cool thing. I retired. I wanted to build this business. I've built it. It's awesome. The results are there. Like we're having so much fun. We're right. Strategy to scale it, like all great stuff. And then one day I was like, and it was funny because there was a firm that tried to acquire us when we were much smaller and younger. And it turns out that we were just way too small and they had no idea. Like we had done such a good job of delivering and had such a great brand and reputation that they thought we were a 7-figure business long before we were a 7-figure business. And so the funny thing about that experience was as soon as he told me that in my head, instantly I was like, oh, yes, of course. Of course we look like and act like and deliver like a 7-figure business. And that, by the way, was the turning point to, right, accelerating the path, right, the thinking around that. And so to me, coaching is really about helping people identify what is standing in the gap between them and the next level of success, happiness, wealth, or well-being. And then identifying the stories and the strategies that they can use, set down, pick up, right? Like we all live too much what I call below the line in that stress state. And the job is to live what I call above the line in that success state where you are doing things and thinking thoughts that are positive, empowered, you can do, and everything is figure outable. We've all been in that state. We kick butt in that state. You opened a barbecue restaurant in that state. You opened a firm in that state. And then we all have that survival state. The fear, the uncertainty, the doubt, the overwhelm, the, oh, can I do it? I'd love to, but, you know, what's going to happen if, what if this, what if that? And if you're not really careful, along the way, the what ifs get louder than the why because of the spinning and the busyness and the activity and the doing. And that's when entrepreneurs and leaders get burnt out. It's where they lose the passion. And I really unretired because I, as Andrew knows, get really excited about talking to people about how to find that balance between personal success and professional success, because that's what we all want. And I realized that I was settling and that far too often other people do too. And then when I figured out you don't have to, well, it seemed like a fun thing to do with my free time. So here I are. Here I am.
So Tim Ferriss question, wrapping it up. Yep. If you had a billboard with one message on it, what would be your message?
Oh, this is so easy. Life is now in session.
Okay. That's not where I was expecting you to go. Interesting. Why?
Because I believe that this life, whatever you think about what happens on either side of it, and you can have a lot of conversation about that. I think we can all agree that it is a short ride between two bookends of eternity, whatever is on the other side of that eternity. I don't know if there's more rides on the other side. If there are, cool. But I'm going to assume for now that I should really squeeze the hell out of this one. And so to your point, like you would expect me to say, right, there are no limits you have except the ones you place on yourself, which is my other favorite quote. But at the end of the day, that's just a way to living life as fully as humanly possible, right? Like I'm a lifeaholic. That's like, I just realized like at the end of the day, I know what it's like to not feel good, to not have a great life, to feel diminished, to feel like I know all those feelings. Yeah, I don't like them very much. And so at the end of the day, to your point, we all ultimately make a choice. We create the reality that we expect for ourselves, and we have the opportunity to expect more. And when we expect more, we experience more. And that's kind of my jam.
Jeez.
Did you get all those, Cam?
Your brain is a special place. Like, it's incredible. I mean,
I'm not sure if I should take that as a compliment.
no, it is a compliment. Like, it is funny, like, to hear how just how it all started. Like, the story just all
super dumb.
It seems like fate, right? But obviously it's not. But
if you're interested, which you're probably not, so you can cut this out. I have thought about this once. Like, how did I end up? Here's what I figured out about me. I see things. I know that sounds funny, right? There's a movie about that. Like, I just see the potential in things.
I see dead
I
people.
See things. I see things. I walk into a restaurant and I see what it can be. I hear Andrew talk about what he does and I see what it can be. He tells me about his process. I see what it can be. And so, like, at a business level, the manifestation of that is I've become really good at scaling special, right? I did in really big companies. I've done it, right, in turning little companies into bigger companies. But I realized that the secret sauce of that is and this is probably the result of growing up in crazy, no question, is that wherever something is, I see the possibility. Like, I am the chief, we call me in my office the chief possibility officer. Like, that's just my job. Oh, wow. I just see possibility. Now, that's a thing you have to manage, by the way, carefully. Right. Carefully.
That could be a whole other set of problems.
They're going to have a whole conversation about focus, right? More isn't better, better is better, as we talked about earlier. But yeah, I love possibilities. I love them in people. Like, I grew up in a house of crazy, and I just always wondered why crazy wouldn't work a little harder to be less crazy. Like, truly. So truly, when I became a parent and I started to see those behaviors, which were I'm not saying they were flattering. Like, there was a time in my life that I can look back on the wife that I was and the mother that I was, and I don't feel good about it. I feel good about it in the sense that I give myself grace. I understand what I had to grow through, but I would not, I'm really glad that I grew through it. Let's go with that, right? I wouldn't look back on that and be like, go me, proud mom moment. But what I took from my childhood was that I could never understand why my parents, and I love them both to death, have made peace with all of that, but I could never understand why they settled. I could never understand why and again, I'm like, my mother had her issues, but right, my perception was that more was possible and they just weren't grabbing it. And so for whatever reason, my brain took away from that, drink from the cup with both hands.
Right.
And so, business is this amazing thing, but if you're not careful, it can steal your ability to drink with both hands. And my life's work was figuring out how to reconcile those two things. Because, I like to believe that you really can have it all. You can't have it all at once, and it's not always easy. But I think you can create a really incredible experience for yourself if you're committed to doing the work. It's just not usually the work that we think it is.
Bam.
Bam is right.
Drop the mic. Yeah.
Wow.
I can't drop the mic. It's attached to the thing.
Well, thank you so much for coming down.
Oh my God, this was so fun.
We could go on.
Like I'm gonna have, I am gonna be in my head the rest of the day. There's so much that I have to think about.
But it's like we need to come up with a saying for it. It's like the Matrix. You remember the red pill and the blue pill? Like,
right.
You've just swallowed the blue pill.
Totally right.
Your life will never be the same.
I have this
I'll
weird.
be in your head.
It's so true.
Like all the stuff he says, like little shots of stuff in your.
I gotta find this way to be. What sucks for me is I know what will make life better and make me happier, but I still have a really hard time like starting.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's
like barbecue wasn't hard. Like it is funny. Like I think the thing that's really like popped up, or maybe I got more clarity on, or maybe I'm asking myself this question, is when I opened the restaurant, I literally had zero doubt. And I had so many people just like, wait, why are you doing it there? I'm like, oh, well, it's cheap. And why you're going to open a restaurant that's 80% failure? I'm like, well, I'm good at it. Like, no, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And it is funny because talking to you, I realized that I'm not like that in anything else. Right. Yeah. And so it really is all just mind over matter. And it's like, how do I guess that's it. I got to replicate how come I was so confident in starting this restaurant, and why can't I duplicate that outside of it? And so, yeah, I don't know. I think just knowing that is probably the best place to start. Right.
Well, you can have we can have a great conversation about that. Yeah. We could.
I know someone who can help you with this.
Do you have any restaurant clients? Restaurant owner clients?
No, but I love barbecue. So
okay, well, we might have to talk. This would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'll come to Costa Rica. We'll start
Just
there.
Think of it this way. Like if you anyone can do this at any time, it's that reframing, which was you think about the next level of success. So I have this exercise, I call it Mind the Line. It's the simplest. It's like literally it takes everything I ever learned and turns it into like one exercise. Take out a piece of paper. You draw a line across the paper left to right. Above the line, you draw a plus. Below the line, you draw a minus. The minus is because everything below that line will be negative, disempowering, right? Distance you from your goals, doesn't serve you, right? Negative, uncertainty, doubt, bad juju. Danger, Will Robinson. Everything above the line, totally the opposite. Abundance, joy, creativity, optimism, right? Certainty, confidence, right? The biggest client ever, the best barbecue, whatever. All the good stuff lives above the line. If you want to know what's breaking down somewhere, you simply take out a piece of paper. If you are, most entrepreneurs, people I know struggle with their time. Your time is your greatest revenue producing asset. You want to leverage your time. You take out your piece of paper. You track your time for a week. Everything that you do that's energy creating or revenue producing goes above the line.
Oh, I would hate to see that one. It's like counting calories, you know? Like,
yep, same thing.
I don't want to see what I eat on paper.
Truly, you can do the same thing with food, right? Everything you eat that's healthy and wholesome and serves your goal, whatever that is.
Right.
If your goal is to be, one thing, that's great. If your goal is to be healthy, another. Everything that doesn't serve the goal goes below the line, right? Everything as a business owner you do that's not energy creating, revenue producing, $1,000 plus an hour work goes below the line, right? And then when we want to create leverage, we know exactly where to go. In a relationship, right? What's above the line for a week? What's below the line for a week? Right. So
such a simple exercise, but oh my gosh, it's so powerful.
Well, and that's
so powerful.
That's just actually seeing it, because it's like in my head I already know that I don't make good use of my time, right. But I'm sure writing that all down would make that visual would probably really help me compute.
Here's what I know. We talked a lot about mindset, but there's strategies. Sure. You have to be in the right mindset to leverage those strategies. 4 ounces of steel can lift 1,000 pounds. Now, not just any globby 4 ounces of steel.
Good. I mean, really. It's crazy.
That's why I'm so good, Cam.
Like, I was shocked when you're like, no, I have nothing on her. I'm like, whatever. It is every episode, like 3 times. Perfect quote for whatever conversation we're having. But I mean, wow. 4 ounces of steel can lift 1,000 pounds.
It's true.
That is my favorite quote you've said today.
It really can. Now, that said, not any old glob of steel.
Sure.
You can't just lazily pick up a glob of steel, throw it against the wall. It's not going to work.
Right.
You've got to hone your craft. And that's what most business owners get too busy spinning and get lost in the background to do, which is you have those jobs. You have to deliver massive value. That's your client experience. That's your value proposition. That's your delivery system. You got to run an excellent business, your systems, your operations, your people, your process, your platform, your packaging. You got to enjoy the rewards, which you've got to have the leverage, right? So that you can actually have a successful, sustainable business that you can leave for, I like to say 100 days. If you cannot leave your business for 100 days, then you have a really awesome job. Nothing wrong with a really awesome job.
I could leave this for 100 days.
There you go.
See, and I should be proud of that, right?
You should celebrate that.
Huh.
Now the question is, are you leaving it for 100 days?
No.
Okay. Why not?
Because my wife won't let me. No, I'm just kidding. Because I'd want to go on a trip. No, but yeah, I could. But yeah. But I do like it. So yeah, I don't.
So there's, right. And again, there's no have to.
Sure.
So I don't even know what we're talking about anymore. I got distracted. What were we talking about?
Just the exercises and...
Oh, the mind your line exercise. Right. Yeah. So think about your next level of success. If you're watching or listening, right? Take your page. Think about the next level of success. What's your 3-year goals?
See, and that's probably my first step
Write
right
down.
there is doing goals.
Oh, wait, no, it gets
'Cause I'm
better. Are
horrible
you
at
ready?
that. Yeah.
This is the uncomfortable part. I do this to people. It really annoys them. Double it.
Wow.
That's the hardest part right there.
Now, I'm not saying, by the way, that more is the answer here.
Right.
It's an exercise in my job is to ultimately, we talked about this, right?
To blow your freaking
Your brain is
mind.
your largest asset, and we pay the least attention to it.
Sure.
Right. So if this is your largest muscle and this is your money making value adding muscle, by the way, I would think that the ROI is right here.
Right.
So let's focus on that. And so if you know that the next level of success and then doubling it, all that exercise does, by the way, is help me find your discomfort. I call your discomfort zone. There's a point at which you believe success is possible, and there's a point at which your brain goes, totally not available to you.
Right.
You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. You can't have 10 barbecue restaurants and have a life. My story says no way. That's the point I want to find, because I don't care if you do more. I care deeply about why you do what you do and that it's fulfilling. And you cannot do that if you don't. I thought making more money would make me happier. Turns out it doesn't. They're actually right about that. It's true. My greatest joy comes from when clients, like literally people say things to me that just make me think I have the best job ever. Like, I can't even believe that I get paid for this. I do, because I add a lot of value. I have no issue with that. But, like, right, I'm like, wait a minute, I have no issue. But my point is, like, it's just unbelievable to me that I get to talk to people about stuff I think is really cool, that has a massive impact. And then I get to work with business leaders to really magnify that impact over, like, that's the coolest thing ever. Like, doesn't get better than that.
So the hardest,
in my world.
So the hardest question is that she asks every time, what would it take to double your revenue in half the time?
Yep.
And it's not that you need to or want to, it's go through that exercise.
Right.
Because there's an answer.
Oh, it'll
Yeah.
push you.
Everyone can answer that. How can I double my revenue in half the time? It's fun.
And then what you do is you take that exercise. Everything, you start paying attention to the voices in your head, and everything above the line, you write above the line. Like, oh, I could totally have 10 restaurants, blah, blah. But you're also going to notice there's a lot of stuff below the line.
Right.
And one of the most common success stories, one, money, right? Making more money makes me bad or somehow diminishes me or makes me a bad parent. The other is success is complicated and will steal all my free time. And it's not hard to imagine why we
Sure.
believe that, because that's the story we see, because we have this conditioned way of operating. We have this very habitual way of being. We have this very conditioned way of running our businesses. But here's the thing. Have you ever peeled a banana?
Yes.
All right. And how do you peel a banana?
From the bottom, the opposite side of the
Okay,
stem.
yeah, because you've heard the story. That's
No,
so cheating.
you know what? I read that once in a magazine. It wasn't even like it was just like, this is how monkeys do it.
Exactly.
And I was
So
like, this is so much better. So
it's
ever
so
since
much
I've done
cooler.
it
So
like that.
I go down to Costa Rica, right? And here I
Right.
am, and the monkeys are peeling and I'm like, so most of us peel our banana, right? You grab your banana and you
Right.
yank, and you get like a mushy banana top, right?
Right.
Or you use your fingernail and a knife. It's not ripe, and you've got to peel back all the leaves and those pesky little strings. There's
Crazy.
in Costa Rica, right? They actually turn the banana upside down, take their thumb and forefinger, right? Pinch, twist, and the leaves come off and the strings attach. And and I thought, oh my God. And this
Where
is
did
sort of
that
my
come
approach.
from?
This is my approach to business. I'm very results oriented. I'm like, if it doesn't work, I'm just not going to do it, and I'll just
Right.
keep doing things until they do. How can we be the smartest, most educated, most financially well off, most technical, most educated country in the world, and not know how to peel a banana the right way? Right. How is that freaking possible? And it's because we are creatures of habit. We are literally, we model what we see. We model what we see on TV. We model our version of success is the same, right? You go to college, you have 2.2 kids, you either get a job or you run, like that story is pretty much laid out. And we're never taught to challenge the story. We're taught to focus on all of the externals. Our business, our strategy, right? Our people, our processes. And that's just important, but it's about 20% important. And there's only so much, like you can really hone a system, and then the system is honed. Like if you get that part right, it's not particularly complicated. You just have to have the mindset to go in and say, I'm going to build a hyper efficient business. Right? I need to deliver an extraordinary experience in the most efficient and highly leveraged way possible. And I'm going to challenge all of my knowns, what I call a condition set, so that I basically deconstruct everything and I keep the ingredients. right? I've got these great people. I've got this great product. I've got this great space, right? I've got this reputation. And then you completely reimagine, like whiteboard, what it would be like in that next level vision. And then your brain will do this incredible thing, which is it'll put up all this stuff about the whys and the what ifs. And that's the work. The work is to go, okay, can I separate myself enough? Can I get clarity about what I want to do, what the gap is between that? And then can I really do the work of looking at my mindset, of looking at my mapping? Like, am I really clear? Do I have the right people in place? My methods, right? If I'm eating chocolate Twinkies every day, I'm probably not going to lose weight. Like, it's just like that, right? That's the thing. But we do these things that we know don't serve us. And yet we keep doing them. And then we complain about them, which is really interesting. So then we put ourselves in the victim mode. Like, it's not my fault that this is happening to me. And so I was like, I'm not a victim. Of course I'm not a victim. Like, I'm so independent. I've done all these great things. And then it turns out, guess what? I was totally a victim. Like, oh, damn it. I'm a victim. I don't want to be a victim. Like, truly, I was like, oh, right? This is happening to me. And I realized, no, it wasn't happening to me, right? This is a great quote. It's not my quote, so I will not take credit. But it was like, I remind myself of when I have that, just that feeling of gripping doubt, and I'm not going to get it right, but it was like the two people are standing around and someone says, are you afraid of the storm? And right. And he leans in and he says, no, I am the storm.
Wow.
And there are these moments where I'm like, oh, see, like there's like, how often do we show up like that? Like, to me, that's success state. If you own your mind, you can own your state.
Sure.
And when you own your state, like, that's your momentum. If you can get yourself to that place where you can take that next best step, whatever it is. I just wrote an article on the importance of taking imperfect action. We're so hardwired not to do it. I can't raise my fee. I can't have that conversation with the client. I can't try that new recipe, like whatever it is, because that failure means something to us. And yet, here's what I know. Tried all the other ways. I really did. But you know what I figured out? It is the very act of taking imperfect action that allows you to learn, refine, and hone your craft through the only art I know to work 100% of the time. Practice.
Right.
Practice is the only, like, I don't know. Give me the example of the person that got there perfect. I can look back on my first website and be like, oh my God, I cannot even believe that people gave me money.
Right.
And yet, right, millions of dollars in the span of a year with the Cheeky Rainmaker website. I finally just, right, but I knew, I was like, of all the priorities I have, and that's hard, by the way, when you are the chief possibility officer and you do brands as one of your favorite things and you're really good at it and your brand is, you know. But when I think about, like, okay, deliver massive value is like, so we literally over 3 years had to systematically go through right, and go through that process. And that is the hardest thing to do as a founder or a leader and entrepreneur, is be selective in what you focus on and try not to fix everything while also taking imperfect action. Like, that balance between perfect and imperfect is hard. And it can keep you up at night if you're not really careful.
Wow.
I think
I need to get her number.
Well,
Man.
thank you so much.
Oh my God, it was so much fun.
Wow.
Yeah.
You have a gift. That is for sure.
Thanks.
All right. I don't know what to say anymore.
Okay.
My brain is just going like this right now. So
Pick a topic.
I need to go to a dark, quiet room and just with a piece of paper and
process.
Just,
You just need a paper and your line.
That's right. I'm going to do the line thing. I think it's cool.
You know what my favorite, for anyone that's a parent, this is just one more little add-on. My favorite use of the line, home. Particularly hard right now for a lot of people working in their home offices.
Right.
But when you think about, I just read an article about the value of commutes, because commutes, while they can suck, actually give you a buffer between your personal life and your professional life. And your mind is in a certain zone professionally, and that's a different state and zone than at home. The line's a really great example. When you sit in your car in your driveway, you can just ask yourself, am I above the line, right? Have I set down all the stuff from work and the stories and the worries and the what ifs? And then am I going into my house above the line, focused, right? Clear, present for my family, clear on my priorities. And if you're not, you just sit there and get there. And you get there. I literally had to tell myself, I'll come in. If I sit in the driveway for 15 minutes, just know that I'll be the person you want when I enter the door in 15 minutes. And every time, man, when you walk into a house, the kids are right on you and you don't have that buffer and you haven't created a conscious intent about setting one zone down and picking up the next and creating that presence for what you want to do with that time, And you get on that spinning wheel, and then you're not present. And when you're at home, you feel guilty for not, your brain's at work.
Right.
And when you're at work, you're feeling like you should be at home. And the problem for a lot of founders, leaders, and entrepreneurs is that your free time never feels quite free. And so the line is a really simple way to, like, what's below the line. I've had clients like sit in your car and type it out. Like, what's below the line that you need to set down? When your brain writes it down, there's a great neuroscientist called Mark Waldman. He teaches the executive MBA class at Loyola Marymount, and he has a thing called a crap board. And crap actually stands. I'm not being crass. It actually stands for something which I can't remember, but it's essentially crap, right? And you, before you go to bed at night or before you walk into your house, you write down all the crap on your mind, all of it, everything you can. Like, my mother never, like, whatever's on your mind, right? That bill that I can't find, but you don't throw it away. If you throw it away, your brain freaks out. If you keep it, your brain's like, okay, we've got this. And then it puts you in a better zone to then go into what you need to do. And so if you can think your way through the line, then that's great. And if you find yourself spinning in the car like, oh my God, I'm going to be here an hour and a half, then just write it down. Right. Because your brain is basically saying to you, I can't wind down. I can't get us out of high threat survival mode because whatever's spinning around in the back of your mind poses a threat. So until you resolve that, it's going to keep spinning because I don't feel safe. So writing it down, to Andrew's point, like, it gives you that, okay, all right, what's really here? Okay, I'll deal with this in the morning, and you can get yourself above the line, which is my goal right now. My intent is to walk into my house.
That's really interesting.
And be present for my family, because at the end of the day, that's kind of the stuff that, the most
shelving it.
Well, look, this is my belief. It's not everyone's, but I believe the most important things in life aren't things. I believe that they are the people and experiences that we have. Right. And so I was not as present as I would like to have been for a lot of it. I work really hard because it's a thing we have to constantly battle. The line is like a thing I do all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm below the line, right? Like, my kids will walk around the house like, Mom, you're below the line. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Every phone call starts with that question.
Yep.
Above the line or below the line?
Below the line. It's like the simplest, like,
state and status.
There's a lot of research that shows, right, we need these feedback loops to change our behavior because they're so conditioned we don't realize it. So think about it. You have the thing on your car that tells you how fast you're going. What's that?
Speedometer.
Like, what's that thing?
She's just going like back and forth with their finger.
Speedometer. We all know what the speed limit is. We have a speedometer
Grandfather
right
clock?
We have a speedometer right there.
Right.
And yet we speed because we don't see the speedometer. We're so conditioned to it. And yet, those boxes on the side of the road that tell you your speed, that you slow down every time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's an external research loop. So the brain research behind that actually shows that when you have an external feedback loop, you will get a 30% better result consistently every single time.
What a great analogy.
So we have this little form.
Speed trap thing.
Yeah.
So your job literally is to create that awareness and give yourself that the mind your line exercise is just an external feedback loop. It takes the stories in your head,
Right.
gives you a very simple mechanism for putting them on paper so that your conscious brain gets a seat at the table. That's your job always, is your subconscious brain. Those stories are running the show. Most of the time, they're in the driver's seat. You're staring out the window going, oh, what a nice ride. I think I'm in charge. Oh, but look, I ended up in Jersey. I don't want to be in Jersey.
Right.
And so our job is literally to say, hold on a minute. Wait a minute. I'm taking the map back. You're allowed to be in the car. I need you. You're going to keep me alive. You have a purpose. I'm going to put you in the back seat. What do you say? You sit in the back seat. When something really big jumps out, you let me know. But other than that, it's me and the nav. And I'm going to put in my coordinates. And so Andrew would tell you, we go through this very simple but very clear exercise of what are your goals? And then how do you retrain your brain so that all that subconscious processing, which has been working largely against you, you flip the switch, and now you've retrained your brain to be on your side of the fence. So instead of shrinking you, it's like, yeah, of course you're awesome. Go do that work. Of course you can do twice, or I don't know what it's going to take, but I know that I'm the guy that can figure it out, and I'll figure it out.
Wow. Makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. I like it. We should probably, like we keep stopping, but I keep not talking. Not stop talking, so I'm going to stop now.
Awesome.
Thank you
so much.
Oh my God, thank you guys for having me. It's so much fun.
So if you're, depending on how long you stay in Utah, Or maybe we'll just go to Costa Rica to do an episode when Costa Rica opens back up.
I think that would be.
We just invited.
Yes,
so
please.
the most random story ever. When we went there a couple of years ago, we rented a house.
Right.
I had no idea where she lived. I was her neighbor. I rented the house next door to her when I went to Costa Rica. I had
And
no
you
idea.
had already been working with her?
Yeah, I had no idea where she lived.
She's like, stalker. I got to get rid of this client.
Hi, Andrew.
Yeah.
So good to see
Like,
you.
what
again.
the?
So random.
Wow.
So I know where to go in Costa Rica.
All right. We're in.
I know where to go in Costa Rica. Yeah, I'm so down with that. Yeah, we need to do. Yeah, we should do. I keep wanting to do a retreat. I really want to do a women's retreat, and I'm really excited about that.
I don't.
Sexist.
That's I just realized that this is the wrong. As I stare at
Wrong
the guys in the room.
podcast episode. Talk
All
about
right.
that.
We can do a cool retreat. I want to do one with Carl on the Utah. We were talking about doing one on the Snake River, and that'd be awesome.
That would be fun.
I call them radical retreats, and so I'm going to do one. I'm going to call it a radical retreat.
I'll cater.
Doesn't
we
that
go.
sound fun? I mean, wouldn't you love to just like this? I just start businesses that like sound cool to me. Like I want to hang out with other cool people who want to build their bigger next level businesses, and like I want to have that 4 ounces of steel lifts 1,000 pounds. Right? We can talk about systems all day long, but when we think about like when you're trying to next level your business, like we can really get radical about where there's a lot of leverage, right? In your strategy, in your systems, in your staffing. And like imagine doing that all day, right? Really framing it, getting really just gut-wrenchingly honest about it, going down the river or the hike or whatever it is, and then getting around the campfire that night and then having that conversation. Like, how do I sharpen my blade? Like between now and when we get together the next time, like my glob of steel is going to be like, it's going to be better. Like what's that next level look like? And to me, that sounds fun. So
I'm down.
we'll do that.
We're in.
Let's do that.